What do you get when you take a former manager plus report combo, who are now real life friends, one a management coach and sudden viral internet star who shoots from the hip, and the other a CX exec turned advisor who overthinks everything? This podcast. Welcome to the Business of Humans. I'm Joe, founder of CX Joe Advisory and the Overthinker. My partner in crime is Lynda. She's the founder of Leveled Up Leadership and the Internet Star. Join us as we talk about business, relationships, humanity, success, and also failure through the lens of friendship, heaps of radical transparency and honesty, and zero BS. Let's get started with today's episode.
Hi, Joe.
Hello, Lynda. How are you?
I'm well. How are you?
Well, I'm good.
Good.
I'm excited as ever.
I am
feel
also
like,
excited.
yeah, I get pumped for our podcast recordings.
Yeah,
So,
I still get a little nervous about it.
mhm,
I'm
mhm.
like, what's today going to bring? But when we're here, it's delightful.
Yeah, exactly. Because I've been told that I'm sort of obnoxiously optimistic or upbeat. I mean, I always think to myself, like, they should see me at other times of the day, but it goes up, it goes down. But the point is, that effect would probably be exaggerated on our podcast recordings. And it's sincere because I actually get really fired up on podcast recording days.
Yeah, I remember Friday meetings with you. You were always like so pumped for that. And it was like
Yeah.
not pumped for the weekend, right? Like not pumped at all for
No,
the weekend. You were pumped from like the work week and you were so energized for the work week. And I'm
right.
like, man, please don't pile anything else on my agenda today. Like, let's just
I
chill
know.
out. And you'd be like so excited.
Well, I think that gets at like the arc of the work week. I hope people don't find this too terribly boring of a conversation, but it actually does vary person to person. That's what's interesting. So I actually do have a case of the Mondays, back when I had real jobs. I had a case of the Mondays very badly, actually. Like, so that's an example of where you might see like the more anxious or dark side of me. In fact, one of our common friends from Daily Harvest, Victoria, we text all the time, and she knows to this day, like, if she gets a kind of grumpy, like, oh, it's joke, oh, it's Monday, she's like, I remember that. But by the time Tuesday comes, everything starts to feel doable. Like, I think we could do this. Wednesday, Thursday, and then building to Friday, it's like, world, watch out. I think I could get anything done. I'm so excited. Then Sunday night hits and it's a 180 and it just starts all over again. It's ridiculous.
Yeah, I remember that working dynamic between the two of us because I wouldn't hear from you until late Tuesday. Like,
Stop it.
I would not hear from
I
you
wasn't
until late.
hiding in bed, just to be
No,
clear. I
I
was
know
here.
that. I know. But you would get a slew of messages from me on Monday. It would be like,
Yeah. Yeah. Right.
and I would get, I'm not saying I wouldn't hear from you. I mean, like you would respond, but I
Hmm.
wouldn't get like stuff from you until usually about late Tuesday is when I would
That's
get stuff from you.
yeah, that's probably true because
And our
everything you were
one-on-ones were on
emailing me
Wednesday.
about, right, that's important. Yeah. I would never have a one-on-one on Monday. I'd be the worst manager. I'd lead the worst one-on-one. Every problem brought to me, I'd be like, it's hopeless. It's never going to get solved. So just give up. Just stop talking
Just
about it.
go back to bed. Just
Just
go
suck
back
it
to
up.
bed.
Yeah.
That you should have that sign next year, CX Joe. Mondays, go back to bed.
Yeah.
That's what it should
Yes.
be.
Um, there's a head coach for the Boston Celtics in the NBA. I saw an
I'm
interview
glad
clip
you
with him
clarified
recently.
that for me
Yeah.
because we know me and the sportses.
NBA, professional basketball, sports. And this guy, Joe Mazzulla, and recently I've been seeing all these clips from interviews of him. I think you'd really, really enjoy him. So I just thought, like, me leading a one-on-one Monday would be like him in a press conference. The reporter asked him something like, how are you dealing with the pressure that you're feeling for the season? He's like, I don't feel any pressure. In 40 years, I'm going to be dead, and none of you are invited to my funeral. So it really doesn't matter. Next question. They were just dumbfounded. It's like, what's up?
So he's like a real life Roy Kent.
Yeah. So I guess yes, exactly.
Outstanding. Um, well, good. Well, I'm excited for our episode today because we have
I
another
am too.
guest.
Yes.
Do you want to talk a little bit about our guest?
Yeah, absolutely. I want to say first off, I give you all the credit, Lynda, as always, planting the seed for this podcast and then kind of a lot of the ideas that come into fruition. But one of the things we talked about when we talked about guests who could really add value is actually bringing a real life HR or people, as we call it on my startups. So whether you call it an HR leader, a people leader, or both, bringing on a real life leader to, jam with us, because a lot of the topics that we talk about have to do with, those sort of people or management issues in the workplace. I think in our first handful of episodes, we've probably even mentioned, the HR people team in a given workplace any number of times. And so I think you planted the idea of like, let's actually have a leader come on and we could jam with them and ask some questions, and they could deliver a clarity and detail in ways that, possibly even we can't. We have our 40 years joint experience. We work really closely and well, I think, with HR and people leaders and teams, but let's actually have a superstar and a leader come on.
Yeah,
So
yeah,
that was
I
the
think
starting point.
it's so crucial. I think it's so
Yeah.
crucial because, I may not be on in my social media profile. I don't know that I am. I hope that I'm a friend to HR, but I don't know that I am a friend to HR, right? And that's
Friend
not
or
my
adversary or both.
yeah, that's not my intention. My intention is to give a little bit more clarity. So, to the people who consume my content, it's hopefully to help them have like take the blinders off, right? To really
Mm-hmm.
understand. I am a firm believer that HR is the most difficult job in any company. Well,
Mm-hmm.
I think it might be tied with like CX agents. I think those are probably the two
That's a good
most
point.
difficult jobs.
Yeah.
But I think with HR specifically, because I am a firm believer that HR has got first of all, I think of HR kind of like the dentist, right? We're going to go down, trust me, we're going to go down this path. It's going to make sense.
I feel like
But
we
like,
should bring this up again when our guest Morgan is on
we
with us,
will.
but this
But
is
the
fun.
thing
Okay.
is like, the reason I think of them like the dentist is they are essential. A dentist is essential. But nobody's like really jazzed to be like, yeah, the dentist. People are like, oh, the dentist, right? I think that they are one of the most disliked profession, right? Because nobody likes to go to the dentist. I don't know. I don't mind it. Uh, but that's a story for another day. But so the thing is I think that they're kind of viewed that way. So they're like the most essential department, but also like the most feared or the most disliked department. But the other thing I don't think that people talk enough about, and I really want to dive into this with our guest, is that I also think that they hold the least amount of power, right?
Mm-hmm.
They're really servants of the business, true servants
Mm-hmm.
of the business.
Mm-hmm.
And yet they're the most feared, but they have the least amount of power. And so, I really want to kind of pull back the curtain and talk about um, what it is that they do, what it is that they don't do, and the best way for our listeners to really leverage HR, the people team, in the most strategic way, because
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
that's where I think people are missing.
Mm-hmm.
So, with that being said, do you want to go ahead and introduce our friend?
Yeah, absolutely. So our friend who's with us today is Morgan Montgomery-Rice. Morgan is the founder of Bloombridge Advisors, and we'll hear much more about Bloombridge and many super impressive career adventures before that, where Morgan and I overlapped in our careers. I brought this out today. I have my Sundays Yeti today for
You
anyone who
do love
can't
your
see.
swag. You
I
do.
do. And it's really strange because I was deciding what to put in it. I'm triple beveraging today. And I put in a Bloom energy drink. And I thought of how there's like a Bloom connection, because I do promise all the listeners I overthink everything. It's actually true. Anyways, back to it. So Lynda was just talking about how, going to the HR's office, like the principal's office, could feel like the dentist. Now, there's a dentist that we found for my kids. And after they go to the dentist, they get to like choose a prize from a treasure chest. They even have like Pokemon stuff. So that dentist they actually look forward to going to. So my new impromptu intro for Morgan is going to be she's actually the treasure chest dentist you look forward to going to. But to unpack it a little bit more, so I mean, when Lynda and I talk about having guests on our podcast, basically our agreement is, if we have somebody in network who just seems absolutely perfect, we're going to hit them up. If we didn't, that's all good. We kind of reach out or ask for interest from other people. In this case, we really want to have an HR people leader on. And we did have the absolute perfect connection, Morgan. So Morgan and I overlapped at Sundays. And before I finally let you speak, Morgan, and ask you to do kind of more of a proper intro. I do want to tell just a really, really quick story, which is that when I was actually interviewing for a head of CX role and retention at Sundays for Dogs, Morgan knows where this is headed, but I love telling this story. The interview is coming up. I was actually with my family in Hawaii at that time. So there, are like time zone issues and connectivity issues. And then to make matters worse, my then 1-year-old Hudson was really sick the day of. So he was at home with me. And I don't know, it might have been poor form or decision making. I could have tried to reschedule it. There were just a million reasons why I didn't want to. So I started the interview and just apologized profusely, to this head of HR, head of people at this company I'm really interested in, Morgan. And, just in the first minute, Morgan not only assured me it was okay, but she sort of embraced it and started speaking to Hudson, who's on my lap for the whole interview, Lynda. And she got to be friends with Hudson, and she made both of us feel amazing about it. And, we moved on from that. We talked about CX. We talked about, people function, business, and life. And we wound up the conversation with Morgan, wishing her new best friend, Hudson, all the best. And I ended that interview and literally just picked up my phone and texted my wife and was like, I want to work at Sundays. I just finished with the head of people. I want to work at Sundays. And fast forward to like several weeks later, I was lucky enough to have a couple of offers. One was from this like very prestigious founder at another company. And I just like kind of remember that interview and that text I sent to my wife. And I was like, that's the way I felt then. I'm going to stick to my guns. And I had a great, time at Sundays. And so beyond like the me aspect of that story, I think like the moral of that story is it really just goes to show you like how powerful these functions could be, and having a hero like that in a business to not just like check the boxes or I have an interview lead today, but the way that you approached that interview, Morgan, made me feel so at home from the jump, and it like literally impacted my career. And then the whole time I was at Sundays, you were my hero on everything we went through, and bringing like the heart and humanity, but also actually the technical acumen and the detail and kind of the knowledge and research to every situation. So that's a little bit of who you are in my career, very special. And I think you're going to be a perfect guest for today. So welcome to the pod, and please tell everyone about yourself and what you're up to.
Well, thank you for having me. And that was such a nice story. And I remember that conversation very well.
I always remind you of it. So
yeah. I feel like I'm like still best friends with Hudson. It's great. But yes. I'm like, give me updates on your children. But
he feels the
thanks
same.
Thanks for having me. Yeah, my name's Morgan. I have been in HR at startups probably close to a decade now. Prior to that, I worked in finance. Don't ask me to do that again. But helps me be a better people leader.
Like, ooh, heavy hitter. Heavy hitter.
Yeah, never again. But sort of fell into people like many of us do. So I'm not like your formally trained people leader, more of an on the job and then figuring it out as you go kind of people leader. But I think that has allowed me to be more in tune with where the business is, and maybe a little bit more respected, which to your power comments earlier, Lynda, I'm excited to dig into that. But now, after sort of many years of being in startups, I am a fractional people leader. I own a business called Bridge Advisors. I just hired my first full-time employee. She starts on Monday. I can't wait.
Congrats.
But we service small startups, usually in like the 10 to 50 employee range, e-commerce, CPG, a little bit of tech on the side as well. But really helping companies that have people but don't have enough money often to have a people leader, but they still have people problems. So yeah, that's me. I maybe have some fun stuff because like that, we're all human, right?
Please. This is the podcast centered around humanity. So please,
yeah, right?
please.
Yes.
I live in Maine. It is the middle of nowhere. It is awesome. I have a dog and 2 cats and a partner named Nick. And we are expecting our first kiddo in April. So all the things.
Congratulations. More congrats. A little Hudson on the way. No pressure to actually name them Hudson, but now you'll have your own little Hudson and maybe many more.
I will say that Harvey is a family name, Lynda. So one, maybe we're like distantly related. And two, maybe it will show up somewhere in his name. So.
Ah, a name preview. Oh my God, we're getting so many goodies on
My
this pod
mother is going to
already.
be like, oh my
Yeah.
God.
Lynda's, fan from Instagram who listens to our podcast, whoever, all of, thank you, whoever you are, is now going to have a preview of Morgan's child's name before Morgan's mom, which is really interesting and
She
cool.
might cry.
But that just means your mom has to listen to the pod. I solved
There we
it.
go. You got another fan.
And then rate and review, right, Joe?
And then rate and review. Thank you. Even
Like
one
and subscribe.
sentence. Even one sentence. Follow, subscribe. Smash the follow button.
Amazing. Well, we're so glad to have you here. And again, like I said, I sometimes come pretty hard for HR, and not in a like mean, like, I will say like HR is not HR isn't there to protect you, but it doesn't mean that it's not full of lovely people. Like, I believe that, again, the people team, the HR teams, they are full of, I think, really hardworking, well-intentioned, good people with like good hearts and good intentions. And I think so many people go into the HR function or the people team with an intention to help people, right? Like, and I think even like in startup world, and it's not just startup world. I mean, I know my mom um, retired from Southwest Airlines, and they were one of the first organizations that called their HR team the people team, right? Like, so it's not just in startup world. There's a lot of companies that have adopted that moniker, but I do find it deceptive. Like, I do find it kind of deceptive. And I do know that there's so many different functions of the people team. So do you want to talk a little bit about like the overarching function of HR, the people team? Do you want to talk about kind of the different departments? Because again, I think that there's just this label slapped on something where it's the people team or the HR team. Do you want to unpack that a little bit for the people?
Yeah, sure. So, I would say that there are many sub-functions like you're saying, but I would split them into maybe two or three buckets. One bucket being like classically recruiting, right? We got to bring the right people into the organization. I will say they are the CX agents of HR. They get
Yeah, they are.
they get it.
They are
They're
the heroes.
life is rough, and I really appreciate all of them, but they're also like the most unsung hero, like CX agents, right? Of like nobody sees what they do. People that I have this like recruiter screen, it doesn't even matter, and you're like, okay, actually it does.
Yes,
But
a
so
lot of internal wrangling, right?
yeah,
Frustrated customers on all sides.
exactly. Classic recruiters who are getting currently ripped apart on LinkedIn because of the sort of macroeconomic environment we're in right now with AI and all that jazz. Then you have sort of your HR operations, which can be everything from payroll, benefits, managing all of the systems, sort of that like the inner workings of making the function and really like all of the teams across the organization work. And sort of the third bucket is like this just strategic component. I bucketize that of often the like business partner work of how do we get the teams to operate in the most effective manner possible so they can drive the best results for the business, but also, and I think this is where where people don't always see the work we're doing, but also they like coming to work and they actually feel fulfilled in their jobs and they're taken care of. So it's how do we maximize results for the business while caring for the people at the same time and not just grinding them into the ground.
So one thing that you just said, and I really would like you to kind of open up that piece. You said, "How are people taken care of?" Can we pull that thread just a bit?
Yeah. Oh man. So, because it probably will touch a little bit on culture too, which is a whole other ball game we could unpack of like culture is not whether or not you have a blanket in the office. Culture is whether or not you actually feel fulfilled at work and how do decisions get made and all of those things. But the taken care of piece, it again starts from there's things on like more the operational side of are we paying people properly for what the market is worth and are we paying them fairly across all people, across all jobs, across all genders, all everything? Are we giving them benefits that they don't actually have to stress about whether or not they can take their little kiddo to the doctor and not pay an arm and a leg, like those kinds of things? We're also talking about what is someone's like personal goals in their life of what do they want to be, what do they want to become. I always ask the question in interviews, what do you want to be when you grow up? Because I think it's an important question. Always. I don't care if you're 20, 50, 60, 70, like I'm going to ask you that question.
I still don't know.
Yeah, I love that philosophy. Yeah, be on my deathbed trying to figure that out. It's a great question.
But it's how do you sort of reconcile what the employee wants out of their life, and then how can the role that they're in or the company that they're at help them in fulfilling that goal? And sometimes that ends up being that your personal goal can't be fulfilled by the company. And I think it's just as important that we say that to someone. Maybe that's where I get some of the bad guy vibes, is that like, if it's not the right place for the person, it is more caring for that individual to say, we should part ways.
Yes.
So it's thinking about the person as a person first and understanding them individually and what they want and what they need to be satisfied in their work life, and also enable them to be able to have the things outside of work that are important to them. Like there are some people who want to work in a culture that it's grind, grind, grind. You work 80 hours a week, and that fuels them. They want to be there. Not me.
Not Lynda.
And then there are some people who are like,
not anymore, at least, right? Been there, done that.
And there are some people who are like at 5 o'clock, I want to go be with my kids, and that's really important for me, and that's my boundary. And HR's role in that is making it clear what the boundaries are of the organization and helping people realize whether or not that place is for them too. So I know it's kind of a ramble on like how we take care of people, but it's multifaceted across all those functions that I mentioned at the beginning. Like recruiters are thinking about that too. The operations people are thinking about that. Strategically, we're thinking about it. Ultimately, it's how do we drive satisfaction in this person's life, whether it's here or somewhere else.
Yeah, that's great. Love that. Thank you.
I think maybe a good follow-up to that, and Morgan, this is something that's come up on and off in our first handful of episodes, is sometimes we're thinking about different management situations we've encountered, or even as team members, like as employees as well, different stuff that's come up for ourselves or our team, and the way that we involve the people team, the HR team. And I think that it's fair to say that it's a general probably trend in like across careers, that earlier in careers and for individual contributors, there's especially sometimes that dynamic of like an air of mystery or fear, maybe around the HR people team's function or office. Lynda joked before about the dentist. I joked about like the principal's office, and there's something of that feel, and it's understandable. And then for those that choose to get into management and leadership, as you go further on, you still have some of that, but start to see as kind of friends and strategic partners as well. But just like across the board, maybe a best attempt at like universally speaking, can you advise on any sort of best practices, like do's and don'ts of really like the best way to partner with a people team?
People team are often brought in when things have gone wrong. Mm-hmm. I'm having this employee hasn't been performing for 3 months, I
Right.
need to fire them. Can you help me fire them? And
Mm.
I'm like, whoa, where, why weren't we talking 3 months ago?
Because
Exactly.
that manager thought they would
Exactly.
just handle it. They
Oh,
got it. I've got
and
this until I
and then
don't
how
got
did they
this.
handle it? Well, I sent them a Slack, or well, they should just know, right?
and then I
That's my
have to do the
Slacker manager voice, by the
documentation.
by.
Yeah.
That's good.
And I
They
have to
should
do the
just know.
documentation. Documentation,
Yeah.
please. Did you document it? And you're like, I wrote them on Slack. So honestly, it's bring HR in sooner than you think you
Mm-hmm.
need to.
Okay.
Often it is when you're starting to have, like, starting to see the beginnings of concerns, whatever they may be, of like, hey, I've noticed there's friction between these two people and I can't figure out why there's friction and it's
Mm-hmm.
impacting the way that people are showing up at work, rather than waiting until that one person has blown up at the other person and now we're in this like, oh my God, we have to have a mediation meeting.
Mm-hmm.
So it's always like when the signals are starting is when to bring in HR. I'll give an example of that exact thing. Of one of my clients recently, they were having conflict between two people. They couldn't figure out what it was. One of the managers just started looping me in early and was like, hey, I just want you to know that this is happening. Perfect timing. Good job, Christy. I'll send it out into the world. Um, and essentially, what ended up happening is I like talked to some folks, figured out that there was a roles and responsibilities concern where people didn't know what their lanes were. So we started building a roles and responsibilities matrix to help people understand where they should be working better, and it diffused the situation. Now, I mean, it's not as simple as that, but like that's the perfect time to bring in
Mm-hmm.
HR. Maybe the don't. When do you not
I want to
bring
talk
in
about the
HR?
don'ts, like a lot.
Of course you do.
Of course, of course. Um, don't bring in HR when you haven't done the hard work yourself, or like the had the conflict yourself first. Many people will bring us in because they are scared to have the hard conversation with their employee and say, basically, like, I have to be the bad guy and tell you that you're underperforming. That should not be coming from me. My goal is to help the manager have that conversation and to help guide them and to be their Gandalf, if you would.
Good
Oh
one.
Right.
Lord.
So Morgan, to be clear, if the manager comes to you though, and they have that awareness or their eyes wide open, like this conversation needs to happen, I just don't feel equipped or don't know the right way to approach it. That's cool, right? As long as they're
Totally.
willing to partner with you and kind of step up and still have that conversation.
And Joe has seen me do this many a time
Oh yeah.
where someone will come and say, I'm having an issue. I don't know how to approach it. And we will write a script together.
Yes.
And
Yes.
like, I'm not expecting you to go in and read this script, right? Like, that's not the exercise. But what we're doing is we're aligning on like, what's the ideal way that this tough conversation could go? How do we like practice that for you? Get some of that like scaredness out of you so that you can then go and actually deliver that tough conversation. I'm your mock interview is the
Mm-hmm.
best way to think about it. And like use me for that. And if there are moments where you have the first tough conversation, it doesn't go well, and you're like, Maureen, I have to have a conversation with so and so again. I'm really nervous. Can you come to that meeting? I will always come. I will never be the driver. The only time I drive is if there is a moment where the manager panics. I've had it happen. You'll be on a call, the manager freezes, or they lose control of the conversation. And that's why I'm there. I'm like the sort of like safety net for you of like, okay, if something wrong happens and we're losing control, I can step in and sort of reorient the conversation. But I should never be the driver of
No.
the conversation.
And I think you touched on a couple things. Number one, the practicing piece. about practicing difficult conversations. So this is weird. I appreciate and enjoy difficult conversations because first and foremost, I think that's where growth really happens, right? I always tell people if you're not uncomfortable, you're not growing. So I tend to really like the difficult conversations and diving into those types of things. But I never go into a difficult conversation without practicing. And I mean, I get weird. Like I will practice, I will let people in my life practice with me. And I'm like, please get weird, right? Like take it as sideways as you can possibly take it. And I think that that's the thing that people don't do well or don't think through is like I know somebody who fired somebody who the employee threw their keys at them, right? Like practice for it going sideways hard, right? Because I promise you more often than not if you practice for all the weird things, it's not going to get as weird as you practiced it. And then it's going to be a little bit easier for you to deliver that conversation and for you to have that conversation. Um so I appreciate all of these things, but let's get real, like real. Okay. And yes, I think that they need to practice. They should book calls with you. They should book calls with me. They can book calls with Jill. Well, I'll practice with the people to prepare them. Well, what's the shit? Like, what's the shit that you're like, take it off my desk?
Mm.
Take it off my desk. Because I've heard some stories and again, I talk to a lot of people. I have a lot of varied clients. I host lives like on TikTok and Instagram, and people ask me questions. I'm like, do not take that to HR. Like, that's
Mm.
dumb. Put it down. I mean, I get the stuff all the time. They're like, so and so's having an affair with somebody. And I'm like, I want to get the popcorn. Like, I want to watch this play out. But I'm like, stay in your lane, man. Like, unless they're a fair, like, unless whatever's the canoodling is affecting you or affecting your job performance, put it down, right? Like, just put it down. So, like, what's the shit?
Yeah, it's definitely like it's not that I don't care about this small, like those types of
I'll tell them I
details,
don't care.
You're not on
but
the HR people team.
this
We
is
don't
why
even have
you're over
normal
there.
jobs anymore. It's much easier now.
Yeah, I don't want to hear about just the stupid stuff that people complain about. Like they're just complaining for the sake of complaining of like, well, so and so chews their gum loudly. Like, dude, I don't give a crap. Go talk to them and say, hey, you're really chewing your gum really loud and it's really causing my focus to like falter. Like, go have the adult conversation that you need to have and stop complaining to me about it.
Because
What
also, what can you do about it? Like,
Nothing.
truly, what can you
Now, I will give an exception on this of like, there are certain situations where it's like wildly uncomfortable to go have a tough conversation with someone about it, where it's like, this person, I've had it where it's like, this person's BO is sort of beyond doable at this point. Um, you can't
There's a
do
line.
that.
There's a line. I'm sorry, I don't mean to laugh, but there's a line somewhere
There
between
is
gum
one.
chewing and BO where
Yes.
that line gets
Right.
crossed.
But
Right.
typically, doesn't that also, I mean, a lot of companies have a hygiene.
Yeah,
I've
they do.
worked for many companies where they had a hygiene policy, right? That it was like, you need to come to work and not smell. Or like, I worked places, because I came up in call centers, a lot of them had gyms and it's like, we provide someplace for you to go wash, right? Or I mean, I worked for a company that even talked about the level of fragrance that you
Mm-hmm.
were allowed to wear. Like if your fragrance was offensive, like this
Yeah,
was a problem, right? So the thing is like somebody chewing their gum loudly is like, so? But do you feel like the stuff that where you need to step in really is where you have to kind of hold to policy?
Well, yes and no. So it's funny you talk about the hygiene policy, and I'm like, yeah, that's like not. I've never spoken to someone about hygiene in reference to the hygiene policy
I
because
have.
like that's not that's the human component of like, someone doesn't want me to come to them and talk to them about hygiene and show them the hygiene policy and like that's them. They want me, if I'm going to come to someone who is going to talk to about hygiene, they're going to be, there's so much shame that they're about to experience. And I have to be aware of that experience that they're about to have. And I need to approach it from a piece of care of like, and hygiene is our, is our example here, right? But like, I'm coming and being like, hey, I want to check in on you and make sure everything's okay. I've noticed. And always say, I've noticed, because I don't need you to know that people are talking about your hygiene, because that adds to the shame, right? And you're approaching it from, if I was this person having this conversation, would I want someone to throw a policy at me and say, go shower? Or would I want someone to be like, hey, I'm looking out for you? And that's the approach that I try to take. But like, where are people bring me in, bring me not in? Frankly, some of the policy stuff is like the least of my worries.
Mm-hmm.
Like, that's where I can make the least impact. I'm like, we've already addressed this. Go have the tough conversation and lean into the policy. And I've given you the scaffolding to help you have that conversation. It's the nuance of, this person cares really deeply. Everyone loves them, but they suck at their job. How do I have that conversation? That's where I'm more beneficial than like enforcing a policy we've already established.
Yeah.
Yeah. And a point I want to make, and it reminds me of like a tricky but important situation we worked on together, Morgan, but is kind of back to this point of documentation. And I think I came along on my journey as a leader to really like embracing, just the documentation of it all. And so, for example, one of the really tricky issues that could come up is if somebody is in seat in a position. Now, sometimes in my career, I've been the new leader that joins. Everybody could like roll their eyes, or most people know what it feels like to be on both sides of that, to be the new employee joining or leader, or to be the incumbent, or like, oh, okay, new manager, new set of rules, whatever. And if somebody has, been in seat in a certain position and now it feels like maybe they're not the right fit going forward. But I think one of the tricky parts and most important things is that this can't devolve into like a difference of opinions. And it also ideally shouldn't be like the highest ranking person in the conversation wins. So like the new boss wins and the incumbent, more junior leader loses. But I remember where you steered me one time is, well, let's sit down and let's actually make sure we have the job description. I could say update the job description, but sometimes the job description doesn't even exist, especially at startups. That person got promoted 3 times in their first 2 years, and now they're like, everyone was super excited, but never really sat down to write a job description. Or sometimes it could be updating the job description as to what's needed from that role going forward for the company. And I think ideally tying back also to market, and industry norms. And so we, wrote up the job description, then had an honest conversation. And I would say collaboration with that person, kind of presenting the job description, saying, hey, this is what's needed for the job going forward. Should we all roll up our sleeves and help you to get there? Or is that just not even a job that you want? And now we're removing the emotion or kind of favoritism from the situation.
I remember that situation fondly because I think it actually went really well, even though the person's decision was to part ways with the company. Because like the first question I always ask is, have the expectations been set with the employee? You would be shocked the answers I get. Like, and it's like the job description, everyone sort of like rolls their eyes. Oh, the job description. Is it in the job description? And I'm like, actually, yes, because that is like the vehicle that sets the expectation. But if you're at a startup and those expectations are constantly changing, I'm like, okay, well, how are you documenting what those expectations are? I don't care if it's in the job description or not. Do they know what they need to do to be successful? If they don't, how can you hold them accountable? And then to both sides of that, how can you both reward or correct them? Yes. And the reward piece is a huge part where people are like, well, this person worked really, really hard. I'm like, yeah, but like everybody works really, really hard. What's that? That's a like complete arbitrary measurement. Was their hard work actually impactful? Like, what's the
Impact, yeah.
impact of
Mm-hmm.
their work? But it all goes back to the expectations. What are we telling this person they need to do? If we don't tell them, we can't mind read. That's my like, I will die on this hill of like
Mm-hmm.
expectations, expectations, expectations.
Yes. So, and also in the thread of documentation, right? So one of the things that I talk to my clients about and my audience in general about is you have to document things, right? Um, because if it's not written down, it never happened. Truthfully, it never did. But and sadly, I think that when you get to the point, especially when we've got because I think some managers, not all managers, some managers get advice in their career or maybe even a piece of training, fingers crossed, that they do need to create documentation that is really, really crucial in order for them to hold people accountable, but also to celebrate the wins. But also, like, now that everybody's writing performance reviews twice a year, like, you need this documentation to just make your job and life easier. But, but individual contributors, our ICs that are out there, they don't understand how to document. They don't understand what's important, what's not important, what's actionable, and what's not actionable. So, can you unpack that just a little bit for our ICs that are listening and help them understand, like, if they have a concern or a complaint or a grievance, if we will?
Mm-hmm.
I don't have my thesaurus close by, so I don't think I can come up with any additional words. But if they have that thing, what are some crucial pieces of documentation that they're going to need? So let's say that they have a concern about how they're being treated by their manager, which I think is a thing you get a lot in HR. Um, so what are some things that you could guide our listeners to gather or to start recording to help move something forward, or at least give you enough scope to say, yes, this is something that we can work with, or I'm sorry, your manager's sarcastic. Like help, let's have a mock conversation on how to give them feedback, right? So help our listeners understand that.
It's really fact driven, is ultimately what documentation is about. And I say that because of how many conversations I've had with employees where there'll be like, this person is insert some adjective about them, and that's what they think is sort of their proof that this person is the way, like, is a problem. This person was a jerk to me. Jerk is a completely subjective word. I can't measure jerk. What did they do that made you feel like they were a jerk? Your feelings are not invalid, but that's not the thing that I can actually work with. What I can work with is, on January 22nd, my manager took his hand and slammed it against the table and said, "You need to get these results right." And it made me feel scared. That is like plenty of documentation I have had. And like, write that down, right? When it happened and what the action was. You can include how it made you feel if that's important, but frankly, that's the least important thing in the documentation. Because it has feelings. Feelings can be right. There's no right or wrong, right? Those are signals, like, evolutionarily. We can get into this. Me and my therapist talk about it. But like, evolutionarily, feelings are there to like help you figure out and guide yourself through things. That doesn't mean that they are fact. It doesn't mean that they are true or right or whatever. That they are there to help you, and they are subjective at the end of the day. Now, that doesn't mean if you feel scared in the workplace, you should ignore that. But what it means is that, like, I can't I can't measure it. I can't say whether or not your feeling is valid if I don't understand what caused you to have that feeling.
Right.
Is it I need to have a conversation with you about how to manage your feelings? Or is it I need to have a conversation with your manager about their actions?
Right.
Does that help? Does that answer your question,
I
Lynda?
think that that's so great. And I think that that was very clear. Thank you.
I I agree. I think it was great, and I have a really sincere follow up question, which is basically around your advice, Morgan, on what are the best practices on the people HR side for how the follow up and communications are supposed to go after a conversation like that when a team member brings concern about their managers. And as you think on that for a second, I will contextualize it with a tough moment that I had in my career. And we always say this, we'll talk about our successes. Like earlier, I said, I had 40 job offers. It was amazing. To balance that, like one of the failures in my career, and this was pretty recent, was I had a concern about my manager. I was a leader, but everyone's got a boss, including me. So I had a more senior leader manager. And I brought a concern. I basically, kind of let on some concerns and insecurities or stuff that I thought was really unclear in my marching orders with during my meeting with my HR business partner. The next thing that happened in my case was I got a very charged 6 p.m. meeting invite from my manager that same day. I had to shift around my personal plans, jumped on the Zoom. They were, like I said, pretty charged, I'll put it that way, or pissed off. And basically are up in arms like, what is this I hear about? You're not clear on X, Y, and Z. Like, what did you say to the people team? Why do I have them on my back? Let's talk about this. And, 15 minutes later, are we clear now? It was an awful experience from my end. And I think the failure on my side is it basically was the reason that I never circled back with the people team after that, as my concerns deepened and escalated, because I thought, shoot, I don't want that to happen again. That was awful. So kind of shame on me, but what are both of your comments on that are kind of like, how should that situation go? Because I don't think it's like that.
I was going to tag on, I think that for so many people who I interact with is their biggest fear, but is the biggest thing that's bitten so many people, where they are just like feeling very much at their wits' end. They share it with the people team, and the next thing they know, they truly are feeling retaliated against. I get that all of the time. So, Joe, thank you for being vulnerable and asking that question. I think that that is like so huge and so big.
Yeah. Because like almost every person I've ever talked to has been burned by the people team in some way, shape, or form, like that situation in varying degrees, right? But like they thought they had a confidant, they went to the confidant, and then they shared their secret kind of deal.
Mm-hmm.
So there's fault on both sides. So like Joe, I appreciate you being like, oh, learning lesson for me. Yeah, there's maybe some ways you could have handled that differently, but there's ways that your HR business partner screwed that one up, and there's ways that your manager screwed that one up. So it's across the board.
On all sides, yeah.
On all sides. So from the individual perspective, sort of going to like talking to our core audience here of like how do you interact with the people team? One, when you bring issues or concerns, and I don't know the state you were in, Joe, you have to be as level-headed as you possibly can be. They can't be your therapist at the end of the day, as much as they like often the people who are in HR probably could have been therapists too, where there's like this like care and like, tell me how you're feeling about that, and that like emotional component to it. They cannot be your therapist, because ultimately at the end of the day, they serve the business, and like emotions are tough, and you have to be as level-headed as possible. Sort of your point earlier, Lynda, of like HR is not your friend. No, they're not. Neither is finance, neither is marketing, neither is the CEO. No one is your friend. They are your coworker, and that is a different kind of relationship than your therapist. So don't come when you're the peak emotion piece. Come when you have had time to process for a second, and then step in and have the rational conversation with HR. The other piece is manage the end of the conversation with HR and say, what are the next steps from here? How are we going to handle this situation moving forward? Are you going to talk to my manager? Or if you are, if you share this with them, say you don't even, you come to them emotionally, and they are like, okay, I'm going to go talk to your manager. You can actually still control the situation where you can say, actually, I'd prefer if the three of us sat down together rather than having this conversation of two separate people and then two separate people. Like, they don't control the entire next step. You can insert yourself in that. Ask them what they're going to do. I proactively, as an HR person, will tell people where I'm going with this next. But I not every HR leader does that, and like, it is you are also a part in controlling that situation. The HR business partner should not have gone and talked to the manager without letting you know that was going to happen. They should have actually been like, okay, I'm going to help you talk to your manager about this issue first. That should be the first solve.
Yep.
And like setting you up for success to have that hard conversation. Because again, HR should not be having the conversations. They should be helping those hard conversations happen. And then your manager should have been like, I emotionally understand that makes me feel upset. I'm going to calm down. And then I'm going to go and have a rational conversation with Joe where I say, hey, HR spoke to me. I hear that you have some concerns. I want to make a place for you and I to have a good conversation about it, because I'm sad that you felt that you couldn't come to me with this issue first. Because that's probably how they're feeling, is they're like, they're upset that you had the emotion, and they also were sad that there wasn't a space of trust because they thought they were doing such a great job, and like those kinds of things.
No, they were immature.
Well, that's
and it shows. That conversation shows that they didn't, because I think in this dynamic, truthfully, I think that there were probably a load of good intentions that happened here, right? And I think that there was probably a level of trust from the HRBP to Joe's boss that was like, I trust that you were adult enough and mature enough to be able to sit down and say, hey, you know what? I had a conversation with HR. They brought some concerns. And you know what? I mean, I'm really grateful that you had an opportunity or an outlet or someone that you felt like you could share with. Let's sit down and have a conversation. Let's figure out where the solution is. Let's figure out like how I miscommunicated or how I could have done this differently for you so you didn't have to feel this way. Yeah, I'm a little bummed out that you didn't come to me with it. But you know what? I appreciate that you did escalate the issue. That's how a mature leader has a conversation.
Totally.
And that's probably where the HRBP, I mean, hopefully they weren't trying to just be a giant dick and be like, ooh, guess what? But like hopefully that was the conversation, but that there was a level of trust, and you assume, sadly, I mean, we know what happens when we assume. You assume that people who have reached this level, right? And I'm assuming that Joe wasn't an IC at this point in time. I'm assuming that like once you reach this moment, you expect a certain level of decorum and behavior from your leadership team. And so, I mean, I don't often, well, I do go to bat for HR a lot. But I'm saying like, I think that there were probably really good intentions, and I agree with you. The HRBP should have said like, hey, this is concerning enough that I do feel like I have to share. And I can tell you when people come to me and share things that are about their leaders, and I'm like, hey, listen, we're going to solve this. Like, but this is concerning enough that I feel like I really do need to intervene and have a conversation with your manager. But I promise you, like, this is not going to be something where you're penalized for sharing that feedback. Um, so I'm coming to
I
HR for that one, and I'm saying, Joe, your boss, thumbs up.
thumbs
I
down
feel
from
I
two
feel like the
thumbs down.
friend who has like the pit bull or like the like the bigger friend sticking up for them. I feel like very loved and supported right now. So I thank you for that. And like my honest response, so maybe I don't know, it's like balance it out or just to touch on like like you said, Morgan, kind of all on all sides. And I think the learning from me, or if I could do it over again, or something that I thought about as I listened to you very intently, is I think I still remember being in that meeting with the HR business person and thinking to myself, well, I wasn't going to mention this, but you know what? Like, F it, let me mention it. And that would be, sort of the thing to double click on. I think that I would do differently, or that I'd also advise, whether you're a leader or purely an IC, if it's going to be especially a sensitive moment of escalation or feedback, and if you have a boss who, if we're being honest, I kind of knew and you might take it the wrong way, then maybe, don't go with I wasn't going to mention it, but I will. But, again, I empathize with myself in that moment, but I think that would be one of my takeaways.
Yeah. It's like the doorknob of like always the big things come out at the end of the conversation
Yeah.
with the doctor, right? Of like as they're reaching for the door and they're like, oh, and by the way, I have this like huge mole on my back that's turned black. And you're like, oh, shit.
Yeah, and be prepared for everything. And so it's like honestly, like much easier for me to talk about, and Lynda and I talk about sometimes what we would do or have done from the management side. If I had difficult feedback from one of my reports, I also was always very well prepared. I think it through to the max. And here in this case, when I was kind of the IC or the roles reversed, I was like, I don't know, maybe try this. And I think it's good to be max prepared on all sides.
Can I bring us back to
please.
something Lynda said that I think is really important? It's the assumption that people are in leadership because they're good leaders and that they have had training.
Sorry, my whole company is about training managers how to be managers.
But the amount of companies that leverage people like you, Lynda, there's a reason why that your business exists is because there's a massive need for it. But the reality is, I think if you had gone back to the 80s, and you look at how work culture was at that point. My first job was in IBM. There was this like very formal leadership development training program. Careers were really much slower because right now technology moves so fast that everything moves so fast. But there was like this care and consideration of how do we build the next good leader. And the people that got promoted were not always the best technically. They were also really good leaders and they were considered. In the last 20 years, that has massively changed. I think it might be tied partially to the rise of the startup and like things like that. But people get promoted because they work hard and they know people. And the knowing.
Double down on the know people. Let's double down on that.
Tell us more.
There is a social component. There is a political component to every job. And like who can schmooze the best. That looks different in every different industry. But ultimately, people are going to promote people that they like more. Now, my job is to try and prevent that from happening, that it's only about who likes who. But it is pretty damn hard when the CEO strong arms you and says, I don't care. I want my best friend to be my whatever. And you're like, your best friend's a jerk. And they're like, yeah, I don't care. He's going to make us $50 million. You're like, cool. I disagree. But ultimately, it's about connections that get people into places. The first startup I worked at, I had more experience than majority of the people in the C-suite combined. And they wouldn't have me in the room because I wasn't C-suite, even though I controlled their finances. And
You're
it does.
Also a woman. Can we call that piece out too?
Probably a big factor. But that people aren't in positions of power because, not always in positions of power because they earned it. And we can't control that fact. I would love to rage against the machine and like make that change. I try in my mighty HR way to rage against that machine, but ultimately we have to be aware that there are flawed people in leadership, and the only actions that we can control are our own.
Yes.
And the only management of situations that we can do is what we can control. So walking into those, I'm assuming as that HR partner, I'm going to assume this leader is a competent leader and can have this tough conversation and not freak out at Joe. No, I can't assume that. I have to assume that you're going to fucking lose your shit.
Because they do.
Because they do. So I really think that's important to assume people are not. And maybe I'm a little jaded, but assume people are not in the seat that they're in because they're a good leader. And how do you protect yourself against that?
It actually, it reminds me of a comment Lynda made earlier, but I found across my career, there actually is a camaraderie between customer support / CX leaders and people HR leaders, where like my philosophy on a business is if you're taking care of your customers and your employees, I think the quantitative side would support me on this. If there were a million studies on this, I think those businesses do much better. Like start out by taking care of your customers and your people and you will do well. But there are these power dynamics in a company, and some companies really effectively elevate either both of those leaders or at least one of them, but some don't really elevate either. I was just thinking about there were a couple of times in my career where I got so excited about people HR stuff, and I thought that I might want to change my career focus to be a people HR leader. But I said to a couple of, that was a thing. And I said to a couple of people, and Morgan, I can't remember if you were one of them, oh, this is what I'm so excited about. And part of it is because I really want to have the full decision-making power. And the people HR leaders would do the spit take of oh, wait, what did you say? I don't, if that's the reason, if you're after true power and always being in the room, I don't know, you might want to rethink this, Joe. But it's an interesting dynamic.
Yeah, the HR team is often not at the table for decisions. They're oh, but they don't impact the business. And what they think it's oh, I don't impact revenue or something. Yeah, better believe I impact revenue, because if you don't have the right people in the right seats and the right systems to get those people to do the things that earn the revenue, you're just not going to make the revenue. It's just you have to see the big picture to understand how HR is driving revenue, but we are not a cost center. We are not. You can't think of us that way.
Amen.
But the amount of CEOs that have looked me in the eye and said, I hear you, I understand that, but no. It's crazy.
Well, in a way, this gets at my last question for you, and I will stand down to Lynda after this one. But as I've been listening to these stories, I was thinking about, like I said, how lucky I was to have a partner like you at Sundays, and then across these other businesses where I've worked more recently in my career that might have 50 or 100, hundreds of millions in revenue, around that size. And usually there's going to be a people team, and you just hope that they're great and effective. I remember, again, another moment of reflection and humility. The first startup where I worked in my career, where I was a big part of the leadership team there, 10 plus years. And it was an intern one day who went into my office and educated me. And the intern said to me, is there an HR team? And I was like, well, you could talk to me about anything. And I was basically the VP of CX-ish. And then we had this guy who's still a friend of mine. He's an amazing guy, but he was basically the head of finance and ops and all of the things, because it's a startup. I was like, you could talk to me or you could talk to Bob. And the intern, bless them, they probably went to Columbia or NYU or something. They looked me in the eye. They're like, what if we have a complaint about you or Bob? And I was just completely baffled. I was completely stumped. So we were idiots. We didn't have a people team or a fractional or a consultant or anything. I think sometimes, Morgan, you are plugging this gap for companies that at least aren't so idiotic as to not realize they need something. Where do you come into these situations with startups? And basically, when would you advise that a company actually needs to hire their first dedicated HR people person?
Yes. Thank you, Joe. Oh, man.
My pleasure.
Amount of times I have heard, oh, well, like finance just manages HR and I just like
Ugh.
do
Yeah,
this.
they're smart.
And I mean, frankly, like that is how I got into HR, as someone just put it on my plate. And I was like, wait, this is a whole career path. Like, we should have one person owning this. And luckily I just was running from finance as well. But the I have clients that I work with that haven't even officially launched their product. They don't even officially have an HRIS system where they pay their employees because they don't actually have employees, they're just consultants. And they bring me in and they say, let's build it right from the beginning. Chef's kiss, dream client. I have 2 of them. I love it. Thank you. Now, not everyone can afford to do that or whatever it may be. But as soon as you start amassing anywhere between like 5 to 10 people, you should at least have someone on speed dial that can be that third party in the room so that when Bob makes sexually inappropriate comments, you have somewhere to go. Or someone is thinking about how do we like onboard employees and make the experience better and those kinds of things. I would say I see most people come to me 15, 20 people. And then if they get to me and they have 50 people and they've never really had an HR leader, or they have put a very junior office manager who, bless them, is trying their hardest in this HR spot, there are massive problems and I am often unwinding them. 15 is going to be my final answer. I'll buzz it in. I don't know the Who Wants to Be a Millionaire guy's name, but
Love it. Love it. And where can they reach you? So if they're listening and they're like, oh, I'm hitting 15, or I really want to build this right, where can they find you?
They can find me on LinkedIn, Morgan Montgomery-Rice. They can find me at my website, bloombridgeadvisors.com, or they can email me directly at morgan@bloombridgeadvisors.com.
Amazing. Well, this has been such a great conversation. I could go. I think we may need to have. Maybe we'll do, Joe. Maybe we'll do like have you back, Morgan, and we'll do like questions from the audience. Like, I would love to like do some kind of like let's debunk this or let's ask HR.
I would love that, and I'm gonna like
column.
Exactly. Yeah, and I'm gonna use that form and like sneak in my own questions, Lynda. I think there's always going to be this dynamic, but it's the max right now. I literally have like 5 questions on my pad and I didn't get to ask.
I'll look at the list and I'll be like, that's from Joe, that's from Joe, that's from Joe.
So that time at Sundays.
I love this. Well, before we wrap things up, I like to close each episode by asking you kind of what's got you a little hot under the collar. So Morgan, what's got you a little hot under the collar? What do you want the people to know?
Very millennial of me. Stop calling me out of the blue and expecting me to pick up and have an intense conversation with you.
Unscheduled phone calls are terrifying.
The amount of unscheduled phone calls I've gotten in the past week has been absurd. Like, I literally, before getting on with you guys today, I had someone and I looked at my phone and I said, I have 5 minutes. I could probably pick this up, but they're rude. No. And they're not really that rude. It's just a personal preference. So stop calling me unsolicited.
Love that. Joe, what about you? What's got you hot under the collar?
Yeah, so for me, something that's been giving me joy and purpose, because I'm pretty sure that's what you asked, is I've been listening to this audiobook. It's called 4,000 Weeks. And actually, my therapist recommended it to me, so shout out to her. But it's been amazing, and I've been listening to it, including this morning. And one of the points that was made that really resonated with me is to prevent ourselves from always kind of only preparing for the future or only looking ahead to this time in the future when like X, Y, and Z will have happened. I will have figured it all out, and then it will be great. And you're kind of missing the present experience. And so this is really corny, but I was thinking about today's podcast recording, Lynda, and it kind of occurred to me to like apply that philosophy to our podcast because we could have fun, or I do this. I'm much worse than you. Think like maybe our podcast could be huge in the future. And like, oh, it'll be amazing and 1 million people will listen. And like, that may not ever happen, or it might. But I think the thing to be careful about, it definitely will happen. But let's say in some alternative universe where it wasn't going to happen, I think it's in either case, though, important to just appreciate the present too. And it actually did help me. So it took me out of the mindset of like, how many people will listen and what will happen a year from now, the podcast. And it was more like, oh my gosh, I'm like doing a podcast with one of my friends and we figured all these things out and we have another amazing leader and friend coming on the pod today and we're actually going to publish it. And it's pretty cool. And I just want to enjoy the moment, as it were.
These are the good old days, Joe.
Yeah,
These
exactly.
are the good old
well said.
days.
Well said, much more efficiently per my normal life experience, but I tried. Lynda, what about you? What's got you hot under the collar?
Yeah, so to bring it back to hygiene, too many smells.
I haven't had enough of that topic.
Too many smells at the gym. Primarily like the people who feel like they have to go to the gym and smell nice. Like, cut it out.
Oh, interesting.
It is a stinky place. Like, listen, I don't like the person who clearly doesn't like that they sweat profusely, put it in their gym bag, and then the only time it sees the light of day again is when they're putting it on to go to the gym. Not a big fan of those either, but I will take that over the person who fragrances before they go into the damn gym. Like, I don't want to choke on your well, in general, my husband has a saying. He's like, fragrance should be discovered, not announced. So in general, I feel like that's a good philosophy for fragrance, period. But cut it out, especially because like I went to the gym this morning. There were no treadmills open. Like, it was packed because it's January, and all of the perfume, cut it out. Cut it. In fact, like, just get up, go. You smell. It's fine. It's a smelly, dirty place. Just be smelly. But cut it out with all the fragrance and the perfume. It's not impressing me. So cut it out.
Plus one.
Yeah, that was a surprising twist. Which is your specialty? I'm sure your favorite would be if the person who has their gym clothes in the bag for like 3 weeks, and then their solve for that is to spray it with a lot of like cologne right before going to the gym. Now you have a mix of the two. I bet that's your very favorite.
It's sold. Yes. Yes. Okay. Well, again, Morgan, thank you so much for being here. Joe, thank you for being here.
You too. The ultimate on that note.
Yep,
Morgan,
on that note.
Yes. Plus one to Lynda. Thank you so much, Morgan, for being here today.
Thank you for having me.
And thanks, Lynda. It was a blast.
Everybody.
Bye, y'all.